Well, I still got a few things to do, and here's one of the things I still have to do. You see that? I just painted all my baseboard. Well, how are we gonna cut this base? Last time I showed you how to use a back saw and a little plastic miter box, and you might have laughed at that, thought that was kind of cheesy. But you know, if you got a small little job, you could do something like that, and it won't cost you very much for your little miter box set. And there's a way to do it. But if you got a bigger job, you can always get this. And this is an electric miter saw. It's a compound miter saw, which means you can cut different angles at it and swivel that around, and we can tilt that saw blade over at a 45-degree angle or any type of degrees angle. And this is something good to use, especially for this tall base, because I cut inside corners on my baseboard and things like that. When I like to do that, I like to use a saw like this that'll cut all the way through. Now, if you don't have a saw like this, you don't have to go to the store and buy one for your job. You could rent one of these at a rental yard, and I don't know how much they cost to rent for a day, but you know, if you got a job that maybe it's going to take 1 or 2 days, you might want to think about that before investing in a large tool like this, especially if you don't know when you're going to use it next. You know, this is a big time investment. Now, if you're going to be trimming out houses and doing that kind of thing, then obviously you need to get a saw like this, and it will pay you back 10 times over before you even think about it. You know, but if you're just do-it-yourself project handyman type person, and you're not going to use a saw like this very often, you might want to think twice about buying something like this. Rent it or use a different type of saw, kind of like what I showed you before, to cut baseboard like this. And like I say, if you only got 4 or 5 walls to do, you know, you can get by with a little hand miter box saw like I showed you before. It'll work. It takes you a little while longer, but you know, if cost is the issue, you can get by that way. But today I'm going to show you how to use this. First thing you want to do is you got to make sure you got enough long space to the left hand side of this. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to cut everything. I'm going to set all the material on the left hand side of the saw and cut off little bits off the right hand side. Okay, so I need to make sure I got a nice long area to work at. Okay, and you know me by now, I always use that little knee pad wherever I go. Now, if you noticed, I'm just going to cut all my baseboard right here off of the ground. And some people, they put this saw up on a sawhorse, and they've got a long table, because you got to have something to keep the baseboard nice and straight and from falling off the table, you know what I mean? And if you're going to be cutting all day long, then it makes sense to kind of set yourself up that way. But because I only got a few pieces to cut, and generally as a rule I just cut down here on the ground, and I don't seem to have a problem with that. I got to get up and down a little bit more, and that's why I use my trusty old knee pad. I like to get right down where my work is. You remember this? This is how I installed all the baseboard in the other half of that same room. With the tall baseboard and everything, it's possible. And if that's all the money you've got, and if you want to do it yourself, and if you don't feel comfortable using this electric chop saw miter box that will cut your hand off in a minute if you're not careful, you can use that. It's going to take you a while longer, but it is possible. I've got quite a few videos that show you how to use that, so check that out. That might be the ticket. Well, you know, there is another option. If you don't want to use that and you don't think you can use the electric saw, hey, you can hire somebody else. You can pay them buku bucks to do your job, to do your little bit of baseboard that you need installed. You decide.